Okay, this is gonna be a long one. I'm nervous. Let's go. Who is the best Batman writer? Is that even an important question we should be asking right now? No, but for this video it is. In this world of mass media, you can pick apart pop culture and find so many niches, and the niche for this video will be Batman writers. Batman writers of comics, not Batman writers of movies or cartoons or other TV shows. Batman comics. And out of all the people that have wrote Batman comics, who is the best one?
21.
Now, I'm not brave enough to say who is the best, but my favourite is Scott Snyder. Born in Mississippi, New Jersey, 1976. He is aware that Mississippi, New Jersey isn't a real place. He's just being deliberately incorrect to make fun of American geography. Personally, I find it cheap, and I would rate this joke a 4 out of 10. Actually, Scott Snyder is from New York, so there you go. Mr. Snyder started his Batman journey back in 2011 with the Court of Owls saga. Now, I read these graphic novels as a preteen. I read the first one, and then the second one, and then I got another one, and another one, and another one, until I read all of them. All of his trades. I believe they're called, graphic novels are called trades, where you get many comics put into one big book, and that's how I started reading comics. And in recent years, these stories have gained more and more respect, and people really love his work. And last summer, when I came back home from university, I cracked open my collection and decided to reread them again, and it was like I was reading them for the first time. I would just read them non-stop until my fingers went black with the comic ink. It was fantastic. And this was the moment that I realised I love Scott Snyder. I love Scott Snyder's work. He is deliberately clarifying that he is not attracted to Scott Snyder. Personally, I find this joke a little open-handed and strange. I wouldn't make it, because you wouldn't speak like that to someone if they were standing right in front of you. He is aware that the audience knows that he is not attracted to Scott Snyder, but the clarification creates humour, in his opinion. And so do many other people, and not just for his initial stories that he wrote with Batman, but his following stuff. This series ended in 2016, but after that he created really, really popular things like The Batman Who Laughs, DC Metal Crisis, and also the Batman Eternal series. Scott Snyder is the go-to for contemporary Batman stories, and this video will investigate Scott Snyder, his work, how he reflects the contemporary world through Batman, and how we as readers can see his watermark stamped on the Caped Crusader. The Caped Crusader's cape.
21.
Did I mention Scott Snyder is my favourite? He knows Batman through and through, and that gives him the ability to write a fresh story about the character whilst also staying true to Batman's core. That is what's so special about the New 52 run. He tells a new story. He introduced new things like the amazing villains, the Court of Owls, as well as establishing the groundwork for the continuity of the New 52 storyline. We learned so much about Batman in these first few issues. And in the story, he does this by talking about Bruce Wayne's relationship with Gotham, and how that changes as he learns more about the people who he's fighting. The Court of Owls, who have been hiding in Gotham for all of history, make Batman question if he even knows the city at all. And as he rebuilds himself, the reader learns more and more about the key aspects of Batman that have always been there, that we've always been looking for. Perseverance, justice, basketball. This is a classic comedic rule of 3. You start with a list, say 2 things that are in line with the conversation, and then you add a kicker at the end to either shock the audience or contradict what you were saying.
Personally, I find it a little predictable now, open-handed, cheap. So, what I do to make it different is I put the kicker in the middle. For example, determination, basketball, and justice. It makes the audience feel like you're glossing over something, and they have to take a step back and say, wait, something isn't right here. Either way, it's a solid joke, so I'd rate it a 5 out of 10.
We, as the reader, are introduced to this character seamlessly, almost without noticing. And this was at the start of the New 52 movement, which was a reboot of all of DC's characters. So the readers needed to learn about whom they were reading. And who better to teach us than the man that could provide a true, yet new, representation.
Sorry for butting in again, but this true yet new joke, and then an ironic wink to camera, he knows he's being silly, and the false sense of pride that he produces really gets the audience on side. So I think that is an effective joke there. He knows that the true yet new is a cringe-worthy remark to make, so then he adds a cheeky wink at the end to show how aware he is of the silliness. I'd give it a solid 7.
And yes, we were introduced to a new Batman, but it wasn't actually until volume 4 of Snyder's run that we went over the out-and-out origin of Batman. Snyder introduced us to a Batman in his prime to grab the audience, and then once he established the groundwork, he took a step back and went through the past of Bruce Wayne. On the surface, people appreciate Scott Snyder for his new designs, like the characters of the Metal Universe and the Batman Who Laughs, but for me, I really appreciate his decision-making and his ways of explaining Batman, and just the cold hard truths, his answers to the pressing questions that anyone would have about Batman. And we go over those in volume 4. The questions like, why don't people figure out that Bruce Wayne is Batman? Magically, a billionaire shows up, and at the same time, someone is running through the streets with millions of dollars worth of technology, but no one seems to put together that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same person. Well, Scott Snyder addresses this really well in a moment when Alfred tells a story to Bruce that when he was an actor, he wondered how people wouldn't be able to fall for his tricks. People wouldn't believe that he was really the character that he was playing, and he really struggled with the verisimilitude, as he would put it. But then he realised as the shows went on that people would go to the show and they'd want to be fooled. They wanted to go along with the fairy tale, and that people were rooting for him. And that Scott Snyder's way of explaining how no one figures out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And as well as that exposition and explanation, it also is a good moment between Bruce and Alfred, and it also keeps the story going. And it's a very simple thing, but you can't really smack it on the front cover of a comic and say, this is Scott Snyder and this is new, this is what he's created, you should like him for this. But it's where he does his best work, in those little answers to those questions. Because later on, we see stories of Bruce Wayne learning how to drive like a maniac and how he would drive the Batmobile. And then we see Bruce Wayne learning how to fix all this technology. And these all answer questions about Batman that you need to know. So I'm actually more impressed by that than the flashy characters. And at the back of volume 4, which was all written around 2013, I think, we get to see a behind-the-scenes email from Scott Snyder to his team saying that he wants this origin story to be bright and innovative, which I think is very interesting because this brightness is reflected into the superhero genre of this era. The early 2010s, we get to see the MCU kick off. We're introduced to Captain America in his costume, Iron Man flying around, a big green Hulk. We're realizing people want to see more fantastical superheroes than realism. And Scott Snyder decides to move away from the gritty retellings of Batman's origin and go for something more bright. He reacted to it and made a great story. So that's another thing I like about Scott. Do you mind if I call you Scott?
That's just a weird thing to say.
He keeps his ear to the ground and he knows what the audience want. So yeah, he's pretty self-aware. Which brings me on to my next point. Yeah, I'm going to talk about it. Volume 8, baby. super heavy, could be his most polarizing work. This is where Scott Snyder decided to make Commissioner Gordon the Batman. Naturally, some people were against this decision.
Boo! Change! Very infantile and open-handed joke. I don't care if you're trying to show the immaturity of the fan base there, but it's not very funny. 2 out of 10.
However, Snyder knows his audience. He knew that people weren't going to be pleased with it. So he used this self-awareness to show Jim Gordon's own skepticism towards him being the Batman in the story, essentially shitting on the decision before anyone else could. He knew his audience well enough to scare them by changing Batman so drastically that people would beg for the old one to come back. So when, of course, Batman came back, it really paid off. And these stories really show a gradient of Snyder's career. So we start with the origin, the prime Batman. We're establishing the character, getting used to him, and then we take a step back, look at the origin, see where he comes from. Then he breaks him down, completely changes him. Everyone's begging to bring him back, and then he comes back. And we all appreciate that now Batman is the GOAT. And this series was from 2011 to 2016. That's quite a short period of time. And in this time, Scott Snyder showed that he was the go-to for writing Batman. And then after that, he went experimental and came up with some of his most popular ideas, like evil Flash Batman, evil Cyborg Batman, evil Doomsday Batman, and everyone's favorite, evil Joker Batman.
Repetition of the list, repetition in the tone of voice, along with the oversimplification, not actually using the characters' real names, does create humor, but then itself is a little weak and there's not a strong foundation really to invigorate laughter for the audience. Me personally, I'd rate that lowly. 3 out of 10.
But, snapping back to my point about how he keeps his ear to the ground, Scott Snyder is keeping in touch with today's current fashion with his new storyline. I can't go through a video without talking about it.
Quick and easy reference to his past videos can make some sort of alignment with the audience there, but it's a risk. If they haven't seen the past videos, they wouldn't know what he's talking about. So I'll mark it in the middle, 5 out of 10.
In a world where the predominant comic reading demographic is watching videos of Sam Sulek reading the news about billionaires getting shot and not being able to afford homes, Scott Snyder brings to you Absolute Batman. A story where Batman is a hulking gym lad with no money that still lives with his mum. Even just from a marketing perspective, this really shows Scott Snyder's genius. People have been eating this shit up, more comments on today's politics than any of his other work. And I won't get sidetracked by the political commentary of it, for obvious reasons.
Nothing is obvious. What are you talking about? And also, why are you using a picture of my close personal friend?
But Snyder again reacted to the demands of the current audience and made a fresh new take on Batman while still keeping the heart of the character. Wait, didn't I already say that?
21.
Yes, I'm afraid it wasn't gonna be all sunshine and lollipops, baby. Scott Snyder is my favorite, but he's not perfect. When I first started reading Absolute Batman, I was a very happy bunny, but there was still some things that really irked me that I noticed even in Snyder's older work. Absolute Batman is a raw exaggeration of everything that Batman stands for, and Scott Snyder put it so well in one of the panels where Batman explodes a skyscraper into the shape of his mask and stands in front of it. It says, Batman AF. Batman AF. I thought that is some cringy shit, but it didn't turn me off. I knew what I signed up for because I knew I was reading a Scott Snyder comic. And thanks to last summer, me reading all of his work, I realized that Scott Snyder is kind of a cringy writer at times. This came when I was reading Super Heavy, when Jim Gordon was being self-aware of what they were doing, making him Batman was wrong. It was really overdone, but I just thought, hey, Scott Snyder is a millennial, millennials are cringe, so it's okay. And that's what I thought until I started researching for this video, and I found out he's 49 years old. He's not a millennial at all. That's just how he is. But creative people are idiosyncratic. And I saw an interview of him on some sort of panel at a Comic-Con event, and he was shy, he was a bit timid, but you couldn't deny he had this confidence about him. He was a very idiosyncratic guy, and you would be confident too. If you knew that you wrote the best Batman story going, you too would be walking around in a constant state of smug Rumpelstiltskin. I digest.
Malapropism. Very simple, yet rare. I like it. 8 out of 10.
My point is that self-awareness can only take you so far, and it will only absolve you of so much. Once you start overdoing it, the audience will just get tired. Imagine if I explained every dumb joke I made in this video in an attempt to sort of distance myself from my bad creative decisions. That's way too much. And Scott Snyder does it too much. But the interview. I'm not done with the interview. The interview is weird. First of all, why is the guy from Impractical Jokers leading it? And also, Greg Capullo, Scott's illustrator. Whoa, okay, this guy, he's erratic, he's twitchy, he's loud, he's wearing sunglasses inside, and he kind of has a red mark under his nose. I don't know if I'm imagining things, but I feel like you don't need to be a nightclub security guard to be like, that guy is on cocaine.
Now, first off, nobody tells me to redo a goddamn thing. Okay, let's get that right out of the way.
I'm joking. But I used to blame Greg Capullo for Scott Snyder's shortcomings. It all started back in volume 4. We're introduced to this body horror, bony, skeletal villain. I think his name is the Bone-er. Very reminiscent of the times. Think 2010's Bull Shrimp, Slender Man. Everything is very scary. And it was a great character design. But then a few issues later, we're looking at Bloom, new villain introduced by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. And I'm thinking, when Greg Capullo is trying to make someone scary, he just makes them skinny like a skeleton. I started to think he was a one-trick pony. And then when you think about the Batman who laughs, skinny, scary, starting to look a bit samey. And I thought that was all down to Greg Capullo until Absolute Batman in issue 8. In issue 7, we get introduced to Absolute Mr. Freeze. He's almost a complete mix of Bloom and the Boner. And I saw it on the front cover and I thought, oh my God, Scott Snyder, you've done it again. But it's kind of like in horror movies when the monster is usually just like a little girl. But this brings me back to the email from volume 4. I don't know, maybe I am overthinking this. This is the personal message from Scott Snyder. This is what he says. Sci-fi at times, adventure. This is in no innovative. This is where we'll surprise people and make something totally our own. So let's celebrate that. Innovative, cutting, creative, paneling. So let's celebrate that. Fuck me in the arse, man. This is where we'll surprise people and make something totally our own. Our story is organically brighter and more kinetic and more bombastic with action, adventure, even touches of sci-fi. So let's celebrate that. Innovative, cutting, creative paneling, fast storytelling. Fuck me, I can't read all that. He repeats himself a lot. He says innovative about 5 times. He wants it to be bright. Yeah, we get it, okay? Scott Snyder, you repeated yourself. You done it! Still, I can say without a doubt that Scott Snyder is the GOAT of this generation, at the very least. He knows the character so well. He has earned the right to say what if. What if Batman was the Joker? What if I stick my finger in my belly button and start jiggling? What if Batman had no money? So to conclude, I will say Scott Snyder is my favorite, and the problem with being a mainstream writer is that people will pick you apart, they'll notice your patterns, and they will call you out for it. But if it ain't broke, And if you feel bad that you're falling for the same tricks by Scott Snyder, then I have just the thing to cheer you up. You can move into the woods. Scott Snyder? He's not here, it's okay.